Now that you know how to drape a basic block, as well as adding in a sleeve and a collar, what we want to learn now is the industry standards for how to take your darts and manipulate them to different locations. Eventually, you will take these techniques and start to begin doing your own original designs and styling. The tools that you're going to need today is your pattern making book from Connie Crawford, a ruler, a French curve, your basic block slopers at quarter scale, paper, scissors, number 2 pencil, color pencil, highlighter, erasers, magic tape, and your pencil sharpener. From your pattern making textbook, let's go ahead and start at chapter 3. Inside of here you'll see Connie is showing the different principles as well as the theories of the different blocks that you would find at a design house. And she's even listed out all the different blocks that they would have already developed. And again, this is before you start doing any kind of fun design and styling and all kinds of cool stuff. These are just the basic blocks that will be your foundations. So the very first one here is the basic bodice, and there's 3 variations of it. The one that we've draped has the shoulder darts, the waist darts, and same thing in the back, waist dart and shoulder darts. And then this is just fitted in the waist. So it's just a basic sloper. And that's the same as we have here on these quarter scales. As well, when you made your muslin with the convertible collar, the basic sleeve, this was your basic block with the 2 dart sloper. Inside of here, she's talking about how there's the 2 dart sloper from the shoulders, as well as you can have a 2 dart sloper where on the front, this shoulder dart here would actually be here going towards the side seams. And then the last one would be on the front, the shoulder dart would be completely taken away and the waist dart would be even wider. The best thing about having the way that we've done it so far is this way on our side princess panel piece, this will be correct where it's following with the grain of the fabric. And the same thing on the back pattern piece. This side panel here also is on grain. So that's why I like to start with these in the beginning of the class to teach you the basics. So everything is all squared up and it aligns with the grains. So for these smaller quarter scale block slopers, these are inside the appendix. So she has the basics slopers as well as she'll have some torso blocks, dartless blouse blocks, and a shirt sleeve block. So you can find those here in the back for when we're doing this assignment. So I'm going to be starting here at chapter 5. What you'll want to do is you'll want to read through what are the basics for recognizing that a pattern is balanced correctly. And here she's talking about the torso, which you have not done yet, but you'll be able to read through what are the basics of that's making this a balanced pattern piece, as well as coming in to start manipulating the darts, pivoting darts, working with the dart lengths, different dart designs. And again, here's where she's talking about how to true a dart. This is what we've learned before, and we're going to keep doing this over and over. And as well, I'm going to go ahead and do a little demo for you on this. This is taking the 2 dart sloper and turning it into a French dart. And you'll notice as you're going through the assignments, there's a drawing, a very basic drawing of each of the examples. So there would be steps 1 through 9, and that's what it looks like when it's done. So for the sake of all of these lines not getting too confusing, something that I like to do is I like to come in with a highlighter pen and highlight the grain line and the horizontal balance lines. So go ahead and let's do this with your pattern pieces right now. So here let's find the grain line on the front pattern piece. We can go ahead and highlight that so we don't get confused with this line with the dart lines. And then also let's come in here and highlight this horizontal balance line. And we'll do the same thing on the back. And then this is the vertical grain line going through the center of the waist dart. Now something else that you're going to want to see on your pattern pieces is when we isolate out this side panel here, Remember, there was the center of the princess panel here, and that grain line is squared with center front as well as on the back. So let's go ahead and get those as well. If you remember, at the bust level, it's going to go from the side seam halfway back to the bust level. So we're finding the center of this princess panel, and then that's going to be square with the grain line, which is also square with center front. So you can put your pencil right on that, square up the ruler with the grain, and we can highlight that in yellow. And then we'll do the same thing here on the back. Down here at the arm level, the bottom of the armhole, so take the full distance, split it in half, and this is going to be the center of our princess panel on the back piece. And again, that is going to be square with the grain line, square with center back. And you can take this all the way up to the horizontal balance line and get a highlighter on there. And so that will be all of our grain lines highlighted. So during this demonstration, it'll help so you don't get those confused with the dart lines. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to transfer this to muslin so I can go ahead and cut this out and pin the darts closed. And I'm going to use this as an example during my demos. So here we have our little muslin mock-up based on this quarter size basic block sloper. So again, this is the double dart sloper. It's got the shoulder dart and waist dart, and it ends here at the waist, and it's fitted into the waist. Something you want to always keep in your mind is we're going to be working on flat pattern pieces. But ultimately, this dart amount here is making a cup, so it's cupping for her bust. And since we've already designed the perfect fitting bodice for our particular fit model, these dart amounts need to remain the same. So if you wanted to, you could make it where there's no dart up here in the shoulder, but that amount of that dart needs to end up somewhere else so you have the same cup size and the same cup shape. So the second version of a basic bodice would have this shoulder dart here into the side seam along this horizontal balance line. But you have to have that exact same amount. So this amount of dart would be here, and then you can take it away from there to have that same cup shaping. The third one is just a single dart sloper. So there's no dart here or there. It's all here in the waist. But what's going to happen is the amount of this, you're going to have to add it to that. So it's going to be a larger waist dart. Also, once you've done that, you've transferred this dart to here and made it wider, this grain line will no longer be on grain. So it'll just be a single dart sloper, and the side seams and such will be off grain. So if you ever want to go back and have like a princess panel on a jacket, then you would need to come back to this sloper that has the shoulder dart and the waist dart to turn this into princess panels. So what I've done is I've cut off a piece of the matrix paper, just enough where I have like 1.5 inches above and below my pattern piece and for the length of the paper. And this way I'll be able to use the same piece of paper for doing more of these dart manipulations. So I'm going to go ahead and give myself a good inch away from the edge here, and I'll come in over here and I'll have my piece of paper ready to go. Also, you're going to want to make sure that if this is the pattern piece upright, that the matrix dots are upright. So these are the numbers upright. This is the pattern piece upright. So I'm going to go ahead and do this example for you guys first, and then later on during the assignment, you'll see that you'll also end up doing the same thing. And when we come in here to the center of the pattern piece, what I want to have is the apex at the center of the grain as well as the horizontal bounce line. What I do not need, I don't need my dart tips, because when you start manipulating a pattern piece and shifting the dart to other places, you want to get rid of your dart tips and come back to the original apex. If you remember, the reason why we have dart tips and the dart tips do not go to the apex is because we want the cup to have a rounded area. So there's a little bit of a flat spot here, so it's rounded off. So backing off the dart tips is what we did to make our muslin have a nice fit back to our client. But once we're going to go back and use this and start manipulating the dart tips, we need to go back to the original, back to the apex. My dart legs here are going to go back to the original apex.
For the next section, I'm going to teach you how to make a French dart by the slash and spread method. But I also want to remind you that this is just a demonstration, so please keep following along and you will do this assignment later.
Now, for the sake of keeping this demo very simple, I'm not going to put any of my grain lines or center of the princess panel lines. And what I want to do is, there are the different names for the different dart locations. The one that I'm going to show you right now is here, this French dart location, which is a popular dart location when you're trying to move stuff off of the shoulder. So the French dart is somewhere in between this horizontal bounce line and down to the waist. So I'm just going to find a point down in this area. And what I want to do is I want to draw a line from the apex to this new location. What you're looking at here is when the dart is finally sewn and finished, this is where the seam will be from the outside. So for instance, if we're looking at our darts here, that's where it would be sewn, and that's what you would see from the outside. What I want to do is, I want to close this dart, and I want to close this dart, and I want to have all of my dart allowance here at the French dart seam. So what I want to do is I'm going to take a piece of magic tape and I'm going to put it right here at the apex, just to give that paper a little more structure. Then on one of the two dart legs, I'm going to go ahead and cut straight up that dart leg right to the apex, leaving just a little tiny piece of paper left over. And then I'm going to come over to my new French dart style line, and the same thing, I'm going to follow right along that French dart style line right to the apex. And now the first part is I am going to close the waist dart. So we're slashing and spreading open here, slashing and closing here. So from the apex, I'm going to pivot and I'm closing the waist dart like so, and then I'm going to tape this down, and that's going to stay permanent. And then you'll see it opened up this amount here. This amount is only part of what we're going to do. This was that same amount there. I also want to take the amount from the shoulders and add that down here as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pivot this pattern piece so I can come down, and I'm going to cut along one of the shoulder dart legs, and again right to the apex, but always leaving just a tiny piece of paper. And then down here at the shoulder, I can pivot this closed. So I'm closing the dart. Okay, so far I've taped it here at the top of the dart where I've closed it, and at the bottom of the dart where I closed it. But it's still falling apart here. So what I want to do is I want to tape this so nothing's going to move. Now what I want to do is I'm going to fold my dart so I can close this and true up the side seam, and then I'll cut away and we'll get our dart shaping. And for something that's along the side seam here, side seam, French seam dart, you're going to want the dart seam allowance to fold down with gravity. So for instance, if I was looking at this, I would want this dart seam allowance to go downwards with gravity. Now once I have the dart folded, I can come in here and make sure that the side seam is still straight. Also, with this dart permanently closed, we can go ahead and re-true that. And then up here at the shoulder, same thing. And for the center front, just to give it a little bit of structure, I'm going to go ahead and just fold that under. So now you can compare the shaping, the same size of the cup as your original, which was all started from here. And then here you can see the new dart leg shaping for the French dart. And again, this is all the flat patterning that had originated here from the double dart sloper. So what I've done here, so you could see it easier in the video, is I've circled where the original apex was, and then I've colored in with red color pencil. This is my first dart leg and my other dart leg based on that French seam. And then I'm labeling the front CF for center front. As well, I've gone around and marked all the edges with some brown Sharpie, and that's mostly just so during the video it's easy for you to see all of the outside edges. Now when we're done with this pattern piece, when we flip it over to the other side, we can see here that there's lots of scraps of paper and things sticking out. Also, when you were pivoting the pieces, there was a chance you might have been off a little bit. So this is one method for doing a slash and spread version of closing darts and opening new darts. There is another method as well, and it's called pivot. So what you can do is you can pivot your pattern piece on the apex and trace off while you open and close darts. It's a little more advanced, but it'll save you from having to tape everything.
Here we're going to continue with the French dart, but this time we're going to do it with a pivot method. And I'm going to move through this fairly quickly because I'm just demonstrating it for you. You are going to have a chance to learn this later.
Looking at these two pattern pieces, they both have something in common. They both have the center front, the neckline, the first part of the shoulder, and the first part of the waist are unchanged. So if I put this on top of here, you can see that they match for that area. So that particular area, we can consider it locked down. So we can get the first notch of the shoulder dart and the shoulder, the neckline, and then the first notch of the waist dart and the bottom of the waist. So all of that will stay in its place. The next part we want to do is the same as the first one. We wanted to establish where is this French dart. And on my master pattern here, I'm just going to draw it in very lightly in pencil. So if I want to erase it later, it won't mess up anything else. And again, we're going to completely ignore the old dart tips, and everything comes back to the apex, the center here. In red, I can mark this dart tip here. That's the original one. And then the dart tip there is going to close to it. My pattern piece is locked down to the very first dart legs. I'm going to pivot at the apex and I'm going to close. So this dart leg is going to come and touch that other dart leg. As soon as it does that, I can continue tracing off the pattern piece to my new French dart. The same thing up here. I can put my pattern back in its place and I come down here to the apex and I can take this original dart leg and I'm going to close the shoulder dart by pivoting to that dart leg. So now it's closed. And then I can continue tracing off the original shoulder, the original armhole, the original side seam, all the way to that French dart. So again, that's right here. And make sure you put a notch down here for that dart leg. So then once I pull this away, you can see here was that pivot point at the apex. Here's where I closed the upper dart, the lower dart, and then we have our two new dart legs for the new French dart style line. So I can go ahead and come in here and connect those. So you can see here now we have the same pattern piece, but the advantage to this is we didn't have to do all the cutting and pasting. One of the disadvantages of this is you might get a little bit lost when you're pivoting. As well, when you're pivoting, if you kind of move this around a little bit, you'll get stair steps down where you're closing darts. So you just have to be careful as you're pivoting that your darts are still lining up across. If we're going to take this and make it a true pattern piece that someone's going to cut and sew, then go ahead and we're going to come back and get our grain line. So again, it's going to go right through the apex and it's going to be parallel to center front. On this one, the horizontal bounce line stays in place. When we did our slash and spread version, you see the horizontal bounce line migrated upwards. So in that instance, we would need to come back here and square up a fresh new horizontal balance line and then get rid of the old one. Also on the grains, you'll see on the dots here that they change. So if we were going to square up with the center front grains, I would come over to the apex and I would look at the center front here, and then I would get my grain going all the way through the pattern piece and get rid of anything else that is confusing. So it gets a little bit messy on the slash and spread version, but it's also a quick way to do it while you're thinking. This one you have to kind of already know what you're doing. This one you can experiment a little more. So they have their different advantages. Also, if we're going to make this into a true pattern piece, remember we don't want the dart to go all the way to the apex. When you sew it up, you want to have that flat spot area for the roundness on the bust. So what we would need to do is back this down 1 inch, going down the center of the dart. So if I were to come up here and find the center of the dart, and remember this is quarter scale, so if we want to back it off 1 inch, we would back it off 1/4. And this would be our new dart tip. So then I can come in here and erase those older dart legs. I would get my new dart tip. Circle the dart tip. And then we would go through the process of folding the darts, truing the side seams, cutting that out, and getting the dart tip shaping. So I went ahead and darkened this in so you can see it more clearly. And using my red color pencil, I'm going to go ahead and circle my new dart tip. I'll draw in my new dart legs. I'll label this CF. And then I can go ahead and take a highlighter and we'll highlight the grain line for cutting out the fabric. Horizontal balance line. And then in pencil, I'll just circle the apex and I'll put a little note here, apex. Now this pattern piece is a little more accurate because I backed off the dart, and it's also a lot cleaner. So a lot of the times what you'll see is people will like to use the pivot method. So they would rather pivot their pattern piece, keep their grain lines as much as possible, and not have to do all the extra taping on there. Okay, so here I already cut one out in muslin and I pressed the dart so you can see the shaping. And again, here it is compared to the original. So this is our new French dart. This was our original two dart bodice sloper. And you can see basically it's going to have the same fit in the armhole, the same fit in the shoulder and neck, and the same fit at the waist, and the same cupping. So even if your fit model is out of the country, or you're doing this for a client and she only comes in once every other week, you can do all kinds of pattern making for your client or for yourself without even having to do a fitting, because your master pattern already fits great. So you'll know that you'll end up having the same results. Some of the advantages of this is, if you feel like having two darts on your garment is too much work, there's too many seams, too much workmanship, then this is a nice way to go to just a single dart. Also having it off to the side, it's kind of hiding under where her arm would be, going towards the side seam, so it's a little bit of a way to hide that workmanship. Some of the downsides to this is the side of this here. If you had a stripe on this, you'll see some really sharp angles of the stripes conflicting with each other as they come across this. Whereas on this piece here, the stripes would come across this really well. But this can look great for if you had a print, a very simple print, whereas on here the print kept getting cut up, but here you would see most of the print and only getting cut up just along the side here under her arm. So they both have their advantages and disadvantages to moving to a single dart. So that's the advantages of slash and spread or pivoting a dart. And then again, this is all starting from your original sloper. In these examples, I did not add any seam allowance. So of course, if we were moving on to final fabric, you would add seam allowance right before you cut. So the lesson here that I was showing you about how to pivot the darts, I was doing the French dart as an example. Inside of her book, you'll see there's all these different darts that you can do. And one of them here on page 78 is the French dart. But what you'll notice is she's going to start with a one dart sloper. The reason being is when we did our French dart, we had to close the shoulder dart and the waist dart. But if you had a one dart sloper, you could do this even quicker. So a lot of design houses will have not only their two dart sloper for the front, but they'll also have a master one dart sloper. So the very first project that I'm going to have us do is we're going to make our own one dart sloper, and we're going to turn it into a mini little oak tag for our master patterns. And then as you continue through the lessons, you'll see when she asks for a double dart sloper or a single dart sloper. Especially as you move on to the princess panels, these are all done with the double dart slopers, as well as some of the more advanced dart work.